It all started with a laugh. Chelsea Handler, standing center stage at a glitzy Hollywood charity gala, grinned wide as the room filled with anticipation. The cameras were rolling, the champagne was flowing, and the night felt ripe for scandal. Then she said it. "You know, Karoline Leavitt's husband is old enough to be her dad. I mean, what is she doing? Marrying her mortgage broker?" The audience erupted in a mix of laughter and gasps. Some chuckled uncomfortably, others looked away. But Chelsea basked in the attention, waving her hand like she had just delivered the joke of the century. Karoline was watching from home, dressed in her favorite green sweater, curled on the couch next to a news folder she was preparing for the next morning's White House briefing. Her eyes narrowed. Her husband, Thomas, distinguished, silver-haired, and indeed 20 years her senior, sat beside her. He paused the TV with the remote, his face calm, but unreadable. Karoline turned to him. "She thinks that's funny?" Thomas smiled softly, shaking his head. "She thinks anything with applause is clever." But Karoline didn't smile back. Her fingers were already tapping on her phone. Within minutes, she posted a message to X, formerly Twitter. "Some people joke. I building. My husband's age isn't a punchline. It's part of a real life. One built on trust, vision, and values. Chelsea can keep her stage. I'm building a future." Within the hour, the post exploded. Karoline Claps Back began trending. Influencers, journalists, even rival politicians chimed in, some praising her composure, others fanning the flames of the controversy. But Karoline didn't flinch. The next morning, she walked into the White House press room sharper than ever. Her tailored navy suit gleamed under the lights, her wedding ring catching a subtle sparkle. But what caught everyone's attention was her calm, razor-sharp tone. "Some people confuse age with irrelevance. I see it as wisdom. While others are throwing jokes, we're closing development deals, strengthening communities, and working on policies that affect everyday Americans." The press pool erupted in clicks and murmurs. Chelsea's joke had backfired, badly. But Karoline wasn't done. She had something bigger in mind. This wasn't about Chelsea. This was about a culture of mockery, a culture that believed a young, ambitious woman couldn't love a man who also happened to have gray hair and a real estate empire. That night, Karoline's team received a call. CNN wanted her for a live interview. The topic? Public shaming, gender roles, and the boundaries of comedy. Karoline didn't hesitate. "Book it. Let's end this the right way, on record." The CNN studio buzzed with energy as Karoline Leavitt stepped through the side entrance, escorted by her press aide and 2 Secret Service agents. The backdrop was sleek, modern black panels, a digital cityscape behind the anchor desk, and an air of anticipation that even the producers couldn't contain. Tonight's special was headlined, "Love, Power, and Public Shaming, a National Conversation." But let's be honest, everyone was tuning in for Karoline. She was scheduled to face off not only with the host, but with Chelsea Handler herself, who had agreed to join the interview remotely. Karoline knew the setup was designed to provoke tension. What they didn't expect, however, was her composure. Backstage, an assistant dabbed powder on Karoline's cheek, but she waved them off. "Let's leave the gloss. I want America to see the real me tonight." Thomas texted her right before showtime, "You're already the smartest person in the room. Speak from that place. I'm proud of you." Karoline stared at the screen for a moment. She didn't smile. She focused. This wasn't just about a joke anymore. This was about the dismissive way society treated powerful women with personal lives that didn't fit a certain mold, and she wasn't going to let that narrative win. The host welcomed viewers, his voice smooth but eager. "Tonight, we're joined by White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt and comedian and political commentator Chelsea Handler. A joke at a gala turned into a national conversation, and we're here to unpack it." Split screen. Chelsea appeared with a smug grin, a soft-lit living room behind her. "Look," she began, "I didn't mean to upset anyone. It was a joke. She's in politics, I'm in comedy. That's how this works." Karoline didn't wait for permission. "You didn't upset me, Chelsea. You exposed something much bigger. The way people still try to undermine a woman's success by turning her personal choices into punchlines." Chelsea blinked, clearly not expecting the calm tone. Karoline continued, "My husband built a real estate empire before I could vote. And instead of seeing that as strength, you reduced it to a late-night roast. Why? Because I didn't marry a tech bro in skinny jeans?" The audience in the studio gasped, then chuckled. Chelsea smirked. "So I hit a nerve?" Karoline's voice stayed even. "Number, you hit a stereotype. One that says if a woman loves a man older than her, it must be transactional. That's your bias, not my reality." The host stepped in, clearly impressed by Karoline's clarity. "Do you feel, Chelsea, that the joke missed the mark?" Chelsea waved her hand. "I think people are too sensitive." Karoline leaned slightly forward, her voice sharp but never raised. "Or maybe you're just used to laughing alone." The studio went quiet. Twitter, X, Truth Social, whatever you called it, lit up within seconds. The tension in the studio was now tangible. Karoline sat upright, hands folded, her posture regal yet grounded. Chelsea's smirk had wavered, if only slightly. What started as a comedy defense interview was quickly turning into a case study in composure versus condescension. The host tried to bridge the two women. "Karoline, many say you're rising quickly in a world that doesn't often welcome young women, especially not conservative ones. Do you think your marriage is part of why you're targeted?" Karoline turned directly to the camera, knowing millions were watching. "I think some people see a woman with power and assume she must be borrowing it from someone else," she said calmly. "That's the real issue here. Not the age gap, not the job title of my husband. It's the idea that I can't possibly have earned this seat on my own." Across the screen, Chelsea raised an eyebrow, but Karoline didn't flinch. "Thomas didn't give me a platform," she continued. "He just supports me while I build mine. And when someone like Chelsea reduces that relationship to a punchline, she's not challenging the patriarchy. She's reinforcing it." The audience responded with a mixture of applause and hushed murmurs. Chelsea let out a short laugh, but it sounded more forced now. "Okay, I'll give you that. It was a cheap shot. But come on, Karoline, don't act like you're not using the press attention. You post about him constantly." Karoline's eyes glinted. "You mean I acknowledge my husband? Yes, I love him." "That's not a scandal, Chelsea. That's called being human." The host interjected, sensing a turning point. "Let's focus for a moment on the double standard. Chelsea, would you have made the same joke about a male politician with an older wife?" Silence. Chelsea opened her mouth, but nothing came out right away. Karoline seized the moment. "Of course not. Because society doesn't treat older women dating younger men as inherently suspicious, but a younger woman with an older husband? Suddenly it's a punchline, a scandal, a way to strip her of dignity." A beat passed. The audience clapped. The camera caught one older woman in the crowd nodding with visible emotion. Karoline glanced toward her, then back to the host. "My marriage is not your meme. It's not an internet theory. It's a partnership. And if that threatens someone's view of what a modern woman should be, then maybe they need to update their definition." The host smiled slightly, sensing that the tide had shifted entirely. Chelsea leaned back in her chair, now visibly on the defensive. The internet exploded. Clips of Karoline's sharp lines were reposted with captions like, "She didn't raise her voice, she raised the bar." Handler came with jokes, Karoline came with dignity. That's what class looks like in 2025. The next ad break couldn't come fast enough for Chelsea. As the commercial break faded and the studio lights reignited, the atmosphere had shifted from entertainment to reckoning. Chelsea tried to reset the tone with a joke, but the laugh fell flat, more nervous chuckles than applause. Karoline, however, remained still, her gaze steady. The host cleared his throat. "Let's dig a little deeper. Chelsea, why do you think you made that comment about Karoline's husband? Do you see it as part of your comedic style, or something else?" Chelsea offered a tight smile. "Look, I poke fun at public figures. That's part of what I do. But sure, maybe it was a low-hanging fruit. I thought it was funny, until Karoline decided to give a TED Talk." Karoline turned to her, her voice calm but firm. "It wasn't a TED Talk, it was a mirror. And what you saw in it made you uncomfortable." The audience murmured again, some audibly impressed. I get it, Karoline continued. You're used to being the one with the punchlines. But comedy doesn't give you a free pass to belittle women who don't share your values. That's not humor. It's projection. Chelsea shifted in her seat, crossing her arms. Oh, please. Don't act like you're some saint of feminism. Karoline didn't flinch. I'm not. I'm a woman who's tired of being told that the only way to be strong is to be bitter, loud, and dismissive. That's not strength. That's unresolved anger. The host raised an eyebrow. Karoline leaned in, her tone still controlled. You want to know why I married a man older than me? Because he listens. He builds, not tears down. And in a world where so many women are told to settle for less, I chose a partner who believes in more. That's not weakness, Chelsea. That's wisdom. The crowd applauded again, louder this time. And while we're being honest, Karoline added, I don't think the issue is my marriage. I think the issue is that I didn't ask for your approval first. Chelsea's eyes narrowed, but she didn't reply. The host turned back to the camera. We're witnessing more than a debate. This is a real-time reset on how we talk about women, relationships, and power. Online, the reaction was immediate. Twitter lit up with hashtags like #Karoline Speaks and #Handler Outclassed. One viral post read, Karoline Leavitt just gave the Masterclass Chelsea Handler never signed up for. A journalist from The Atlantic posted, no shouting, no insults, just composure, clarity, and control. Karoline might be the most dangerous kind of opponent, one who doesn't need to raise her voice to win. Karoline had turned the narrative on its head, not just defending herself, but exposing the subtle misogyny masked as progressive humor. She wasn't just surviving the moment. She was rewriting it. As the next segment began, the host shifted the focus. Let's zoom out for a moment. This isn't just about two women exchanging barbs. There's a deeper cultural conversation unfolding here, one that touches on age, marriage, ambition, and respect. Karoline, you've struck a nerve. Why do you think that is? Karoline didn't hesitate. Because the rules keep changing. Women are told to be independent, but also not intimidating. To succeed, but not too much. To marry, but only if the match looks like a Hollywood script. And when we step outside those bounds, we're ridiculed. Especially by those who claim to stand for empowerment. Chelsea raised an eyebrow. You think I don't stand for empowerment? Karoline turned to her, voice calm but surgical. I think you stand for a version of it. One that excludes women like me. The silence in the studio was almost reverent. You say I married my husband for money or safety, Karoline continued. But he married me for the same reason I married him. Trust, respect, and vision. He's a builder. And I've always admired people who build, because I come from a family that didn't have much. Chelsea tried to interrupt, but Karoline kept going, her tone now edged with emotion. My father was a mechanic. My mother worked 2 jobs. I wasn't born into the elite, Chelsea. I earned every step. And when I met someone who'd built his life from the ground up, I didn't see a sugar daddy. I saw a teammate. There was no applause yet, just a heavy stillness as her words hung in the air. And maybe that scares people more than anything, Karoline added. That a woman could choose love, purpose, and tradition without asking permission from a culture obsessed with rebellion for rebellion's sake. Chelsea shifted, finally speaking. That's rich coming from someone who's profited off politics. Karoline nodded slowly. And you've profited off comedy. We all build careers, but what are we building them on? Mockery or meaning? The host leaned forward, eyes wide. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just a debate anymore. This is a reckoning. Social media exploded. Commentators called the segment a culture war in real time. TikTok filled with clips of Karoline's speech. One video captioned, "This wasn't a takedown. This was a teaching," reached 2 million views in 3 hours. Even celebrities weighed in. Conservative figures praised Karoline's composure, while some liberal influencers admitted Chelsea got caught playing shallow against someone who came with depth. By the end of the segment, one thing was clear. Karoline Leavitt hadn't just defended her marriage. She had challenged the very lens through which America views relationships, ambition, and womanhood. And for the first time in a long time, Chelsea Handler didn't have a punchline. After the broadcast ended, the studio lights dimmed and applause slowly faded, but the tension clung to the air like smoke after a fire. Karoline stepped off the stage with poise, her heels clicking against the studio floor. Chelsea lingered behind, silent, seemingly caught off guard by the shift in audience sentiment. Backstage in the green room, things took another unexpected turn. One of the younger production assistants approached Karoline, her voice low and a bit shaky. "Miss Leavitt, I just wanted to say thank you. My boyfriend's 12 years older than me, and I get weird looks all the time. What you said, it meant something." Karoline smiled gently, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Don't let the noise drown out your own voice. You know your heart better than anyone." Behind them, Chelsea entered the room, flanked by her manager and a PR rep. The room stiffened. Karoline turned, ready for another jab, but Chelsea paused, her usual bravado muted. She looked at Karoline for a beat, then finally said, "You're good. I didn't expect that." Karoline simply nodded. "I didn't come to surprise you. I came to speak the truth." Chelsea's expression flickered, half defiance, half something else. "You should be on late-night TV," she muttered, almost to herself. "Funny," Karoline replied with a small smile. "I was just thinking the same about you. If only you'd let people speak before the punchline." The exchange was short but meaningful. For once, Chelsea didn't have a comeback. Instead, she walked past Karoline and out of the room without another word. Within minutes, a leaked clip from the green room, Karoline speaking to the production assistant, began circulating on social media. The public response was overwhelming. One viral tweet read, "Karoline just exposed the hypocrisy in the loudest way by staying calm." News outlets ran headlines like, "Karoline wins the culture clash," "Handler's jokes fall flat against Leavitt's reality," "Real estate and real talk, Karoline Leavitt's moment." Meanwhile, Karoline's husband, watching from their home in New Hampshire, texted her, "You didn't just defend us, you elevated us. Proud doesn't even cover it." Karoline stared at the message, her heart full. This wasn't just about Chelsea anymore. It was about every young woman who had ever been told she was too young, too ambitious, or too traditional. And Karoline had just shown them that with grace, grit, and truth, none of that matters. The following morning, Karoline woke up to a storm of notifications. Overnight, her words had become a cultural flashpoint. On political shows, Twitter, and Instagram Reels, one moment in particular was playing again and again, her looking straight at Chelsea Handler and calmly saying, "My husband didn't marry a joke, he married a fighter." The line had struck a nerve. Conservative commentators celebrated her takedown. But more surprisingly, even some apolitical voices had taken notice. A popular lifestyle influencer posted a TikTok saying, "I don't care what side you're on. That woman held her ground with class." Chelsea's team tried to contain the fallout. They issued a short tweet claiming it had all been satire and that people need to learn to laugh more. But the internet wasn't laughing. The tide had turned. The hashtag number not too young started trending, originating from Karoline's remark about age not defining worth. Thousands of women, especially those in age gap relationships or working in male-dominated industries, shared their stories. One tweet read, "I'm 26, my husband is 40, and yes, he respects me more than any guy my age ever did." "Thank you, Karoline." Karoline sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee, her husband across from her scrolling through headlines. "Did you see this one?" he asked, reading aloud. "Karoline Leavitt redefines grace under fire. Handler's ageism backfires." She raised an eyebrow. "Grace under fire, I like that." He leaned in, half joking. "So, when's the book tour start?" Karoline laughed. "One war at a time." But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about clapping back at Chelsea. It had become something larger. A moment where she wasn't just defending herself, or even her marriage, but representing a much broader resistance against dismissive labels, outdated expectations, and shallow media jabs. By noon, Fox News called. They wanted her on The Angle. Then came an email from the Daily Wire, and one from a best-selling author who wanted to co-write something titled Young, Married, and Misunderstood. Karoline's team was already sorting through opportunities, but she remained grounded. When her assistant asked how to respond to the offers, she simply said, "Tell them I'll talk when I'm ready. Right now, I want to keep building something that lasts longer than applause." Her husband smiled. "That's why I married you." Karoline nodded, eyes clear. And that's what Chelsea will never understand. By the end of the week, Karoline Leavitt was no longer just a trending name. She had become a symbol. In conservative circles, she was hailed as the woman who stood up to Hollywood hypocrisy. But even outside of politics, something was shifting. Her story had pierced the usual noise, and people from all walks of life were paying attention. One afternoon, Karoline found herself invited to a podcast hosted by a centrist millennial voice. "You're the most talked about woman this week," the host opened, "and it started with a single insult about your marriage. What do you think that says about where we are as a culture?" Karoline leaned forward, choosing her words with care. "I think we've let ourselves believe that youth equals ignorance, and that if you don't fit someone's mold, if you marry differently, think differently, speak differently, you're fair game for ridicule. But I won't play by those rules. I married a man who builds things, and I intend to do the same." Clips from the podcast exploded online. One comment under a reel read, "She didn't just defend her marriage. She gave us permission to be proud of our choices, even when they don't look like the world expects." Even critics had to admit, Karoline wasn't just reactive, she was strategic. Behind closed doors, Chelsea Handler's team debated damage control. "Should we double down, ignore it, apologize?" one producer asked during a crisis meeting. Chelsea, visibly tired of the backlash, muttered, "I made a joke." I didn't expect her to launch a movement. Back at Karoline's office, a young staffer approached with a folder. "A few more requests for interviews, plus a draft op-ed if you want to speak directly to the public." Karoline flipped through it and paused. "No," she said, "I'll write my own. This isn't about clicks, it's about clarity." That evening, she sat at her laptop and began typing, "To every young woman who's been underestimated, to every wife whose marriage has been mocked, and to every voice that's been told, you're too young, too pretty, too soft, too loud, I see you, and I'm not backing down." She hit publish. The next morning, her op-ed was featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Post, and the Federalist. Supporters rallied behind her. Critics stayed loud, but noticeably more careful. Karoline had redefined the rules of engagement. This wasn't about a talk show jab anymore. It was about resilience, grace under fire, and the audacity to build something real in a world addicted to tearing people down. And as her husband greeted her with a quiet nod and warm coffee that morning, she smiled and whispered, "Let's build something even bigger." By midweek, something remarkable had happened. Karoline Leavitt's voice hadn't just echoed through conservative circles, it had cut across partisan lines. Her op-ed wasn't just shared by politicians or pundits. It was reposted by young professionals, mothers, and even unexpected celebrities. One viral tweet read, "You don't have to agree with her politics to admire the way she handled that hit. Grace is power." The effect caught even Karoline off guard. Her husband, now more used to staying in the shadows of her rising political spotlight, watched with pride. "You didn't just survive a hit," he told her. "You turned it into a platform." But Chelsea Handler was still simmering beneath the surface. Though she hadn't spoken publicly since the backlash, sources close to her revealed she was furious. "This wasn't supposed to spiral," she reportedly told a friend. "She's turning it into a TED Talk." Still, Chelsea couldn't resist one last attempt to salvage her ground. She took to her own show and issued a statement dripping with sarcasm. "Well, apparently I triggered America by pointing out something obvious. Sorry, I didn't know marrying a millionaire developer twice your age is now a moral virtue." Karoline didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned into it. That night, during a televised interview with a moderate news anchor, she responded calmly, "Let's set the record straight. My husband isn't just a developer. He's a man who believes in building futures, not tearing people down. And if that threatens someone's comedy routine, maybe the punchline's the problem." The anchor blinked, impressed. "That's quite the response." "Truth is sharp when you're not used to hearing it," Karoline added, with a smile that didn't need to scream. Social media lit up once again. This time, it wasn't outrage. It was admiration. Even late-night hosts who previously mocked Karoline began treading carefully, afraid they might be next on the wrong side of a well-articulated storm. Meanwhile, young women started messaging her team. College students, working moms, political independents. They weren't reaching out for political endorsements. They were reaching out because they saw themselves in Karoline, underestimated, mocked, and yet still standing taller. One message read, "I never liked politics until now. But seeing someone like you handle cruelty with composure? I'm listening." Karoline's campaign office noticed a spike in volunteer signups. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was inspiring people. And she knew it was just the beginning. The final wave came not with a shout, but with a standing ovation. Karoline had been invited to speak at a bipartisan women's leadership summit in Atlanta, a place where political affiliations usually collided in silence. Yet on this day, she stood center stage, not as a partisan warrior, but as a woman who had weathered a storm and walked out stronger. She looked across the room, knowing many had come expecting confrontation or defensiveness. Instead, she began with quiet power. "I was told my marriage was a joke, that the man I love made me a symbol of something outdated, something weak. But let me tell you who he is. He's the man who believed in me before the headlines, who encouraged me to speak louder when the world wanted me quiet, and who stood beside me when others pointed and laughed." Silence. Not awkward, but reverent. She continued, "If that's something to mock, then maybe the joke's on those who don't understand what real partnership looks like." Reporters in the back scribbled like mad. Some looked up, visibly surprised. Even those who had been skeptical now found it difficult to dismiss her authenticity. This wasn't just optics. This was conviction. As she left the stage, the applause wasn't just loud. It was sustained. Chelsea Handler didn't respond publicly again. Some say her team advised silence. Others suggest she simply realized there was no comeback. Her punchline had unraveled into a movement she hadn't intended to start. Karoline didn't gloat. She went back to work, policy meetings, local outreach, community panels. But something had shifted. She wasn't just another rising figure on the right anymore. She had crossed a cultural threshold, speaking to Americans across divides, through clarity, through restraint, through strength. In one of her closing interviews, when asked what the incident with Chelsea had taught her, she smiled gently and replied, "When they underestimate you, when they reduce you to a joke, don't answer with anger, answer with purpose. They won't know what to do with that." And that's exactly what she had done. From a mockery to a moment of influence, Karoline Leavitt didn't just survive the insult. She transformed it into a defining chapter. Thanks for watching Surprising Stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful moments where words spark change and character conquers criticism.